Last year, I made a promise to myself. One book every single week for an entire year. 52 books, 52 weeks. No excuses. And I did it. I read books on habits, psychology, money, relationships, stoicism, neuroscience, business, philosophy. Some of them were life-changing. Most of them were honestly a waste of time. And that's what nobody tells you about the read more books advice. Not every book deserves your time. Not every bestseller will change your life. And after 52 of them, I can tell you with complete confidence, only 5 actually mattered. 5 books that shifted how I think, how I act, how I live. Today, I'm going to tell you exactly which ones they are, what I learned from each one, and why the other 47 books barely moved the needle. If you've been wondering which books are actually worth reading, stay until the end, because book number 5 is the one almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most important one I've ever read. Let's get into it. Okay, first, let me tell you how this whole thing started. It was January 1st. I was doing what everyone does on New Year's Day, sitting on my couch, eating leftovers, watching other people make goals on Instagram. And I felt this creeping sense of being stuck, like my life hadn't moved forward in a meaningful way in a while. I wasn't miserable, but I wasn't growing either. So I decided I was going to do something about it. A lot of people make goals like go to the gym more or eat cleaner. I wanted to build something mental, something in my head. I wanted to become smarter, more aware, better at navigating life. So I made a simple rule, 1 book per week. Finish it by Sunday. Move on Monday. No reads. No audiobook shortcuts for dense books. Actual reading. Now, I want to be honest with you. It wasn't always pretty. Week 22, I was reading a 400-page behavioral economics book during a crazy work week. Week 38, I chose a book that was so bad I almost quit the whole challenge. But I finished. 52 books. And looking back, here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of those books were repetitive. They were saying the same things with different metaphors and different covers. The self-help industry has a dirty secret. A lot of these books could be a 10-minute blog post, but 5 of them? 5 were different. 5 books cracked something open in me that I can't close. And those are the ones I want to share today. I'm going to give you the big ideas, the lessons that actually stuck, and be really honest about why each one made the cut over the other 47. Let's start with book number 1. Book number 1 is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Now, if you've heard of this book, you might be thinking, yeah, everyone recommends that one. I know. I delayed reading it for years for exactly that reason. But here's what I didn't expect. It completely destroyed my understanding of suffering and purpose. For those who don't know, Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. He spent years in Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz. This book is split into 2 parts, his experience in the camps and his psychological framework called logotherapy, which is basically a therapy built around the idea that the primary human drive is the search for meaning, not pleasure, not power, meaning. The part that wrecked me most, there's a passage where Frankl talks about watching prisoners in the camps. Some men in the absolute worst conditions imaginable, no food, freezing temperatures, total loss of freedom, still found ways to give comfort to others. They gave away their last piece of bread. And Frankl's observation was this: everything can be taken from a man except one thing, the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. I've heard motivational quotes my whole life. None of them landed like that sentence, read in context of what that man actually lived through. The big idea I took from this book: meaning is more powerful than motivation. Motivation is a feeling. It comes and goes. But meaning is a direction. When you know why you're doing something, really know it, you can endure almost anything. After reading this, I stopped asking myself, how do I get motivated to do hard things? And started asking, why does this actually matter to me? That shift changed everything about how I approach my goals, my work, my life. This is the book I'll read again when I'm 40, 50, and 60. It's that kind of book. Book number 2 is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Okay, fair warning, this book is dense. It's not a beach read. But it is, without exaggeration, one of the most important books I've ever read about what it means to be human. Kahneman is a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, and this book is essentially a masterclass in how your brain actually works versus how you think it works. His core idea: you have 2 systems of thinking. System 1 is fast, automatic, emotional, and unconscious. It's the part of you that jumps when someone scares you. It's the gut feeling you get about a person in the first 10 seconds. System 2 is slow, deliberate, logical, and effortful. It's the part you use when you're solving a math problem or making a big decision, or at least the part you think you use. Here's the kicker. Kahneman spent his career proving that System 1 is running the show far more than we admit, and System 2 is lazy. It mostly just validates what System 1 already decided. This means most of your rational decisions aren't rational at all. The part that genuinely made me uncomfortable? A concept called the anchoring effect. Here's an example Kahneman gives. If you spin a wheel that lands on 65, then someone asks you, what percentage of African countries are in the United Nations? Your answer will be significantly higher than if the wheel landed on 10. A random, irrelevant number physically changes your judgment. And this happens constantly in negotiations, in how you perceive your salary, in how you judge other people, in how you decide what risks to take. The big lesson I took: you are not as rational as you think. And that's okay once you know it. After reading this book, I started building systems for my important decisions. I started sleeping on big choices instead of going with my gut. I started noticing my own cognitive biases in real time. I'm still not fully rational. Nobody is. But now I know which shortcuts my brain loves to take, and I can slow down when it matters. This is the book I recommend to every person who thinks they're a good decision maker. Book number 3, Deep Work by Cal Newport. I read this one during week 17 of the challenge, and it hit me at exactly the right time because I was drowning in distraction. Cal Newport's argument is simple but devastating. The ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task is becoming increasingly rare and increasingly valuable. He calls this deep work, and he argues that most of us have accidentally trained ourselves to be completely incapable of it. Think about your average day. How many times do you check your phone before noon? How many times does a notification pull you out of something important? How often are you in a meeting when you should be doing actual work? Newport makes a distinction between deep work and shallow work. Shallow work is email, Slack messages, quick tasks, things that don't require much cognitive effort and can be replicated. Deep work is the hard, focused, creative, high-value work that actually moves things forward. His argument: the people winning in the knowledge economy are the ones who can do deep work, and most people have optimized their lives for exactly the opposite. The chapter that changed my actual behavior? He talks about a concept called attention residue. When you switch from task A to task B, part of your attention stays stuck on task A. Every interruption, every tab switch, every text message, it leaves residue. And by the end of a day full of interruptions, your brain is covered in residue. You've been busy all day but produced almost nothing of real value. After reading this, I made one change. I blocked out 2 hours every morning. No phone, no email, no social media. Just the one thing I most needed to think about. Within 2 weeks, my output doubled. Not my hours, not my effort, my output. That's how powerful uninterrupted focus is. If you're someone who feels busy all the time, but like you're not actually getting anywhere, this book was written for you. Okay, book number 4. And I'll be honest, I almost didn't put this one on the list, because when I picked it up, I assumed it was going to be another generic just be positive and believe in yourself book with an edgy title slapped on it. I was wrong. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson is genuinely one of the most honest books about life and values that I've ever read. Here's the core idea that flipped my thinking. You don't get to choose whether you suffer. You only get to choose what you suffer for. Manson's argument is that the self-help industry has been selling people a lie. The idea that positive thinking and chasing happiness leads to a good life. He says the opposite is true. Constantly pursuing happiness actually makes you more miserable because it means you're always focused on what you don't have. Instead, he says, the question isn't, how do I feel better? The question is, what pain am I willing to sustain? Want a great body? Are you willing to sustain the pain of consistent workouts when you don't feel like it? Want a successful business? Are you willing to sustain the pain of failure, rejection, and uncertainty for years? Want a deep relationship? Are you willing to sustain the pain of vulnerability and difficult conversations? Your answer to those questions determines everything. The chapter that stuck with me most is called You Are Not Special. And I know that sounds harsh, but Manson's point is that our culture has created a generation of people who believe they're entitled to a great life without the struggle to build it. And that entitlement is making people miserable. The moment you accept that you're ordinary, that you're going to fail, that your feelings aren't always valid, that the world doesn't owe you anything, is the moment you can actually start building something real. This book gave me permission to stop pretending everything was fine and start being honest about what I actually wanted and what I was actually willing to do to get it. Read this one. It's funny, it's direct, and it will make you slightly uncomfortable in the best possible way. And here we are. Book number 5. The one I told you about in the beginning, the one almost nobody talks about, but might be the most important one on this list. The Almanac of Naval Ravikant by Eric Jorgensen. Now, Naval Ravikant is a venture capitalist and entrepreneur. But this book isn't really about investing or business. It's a collection of his ideas on wealth, happiness, and how to think about life. And it's completely free online. You can download a PDF right now for $0, which is kind of ironic because the ideas inside it are worth more than most $30 books. Here are the 2 ideas that permanently changed how I think. Idea 1. Specific knowledge. Naval argues that you should not try to compete in areas where 1,000 people have already spent 10 years. Instead, You should find the intersection of things you're uniquely good at, uniquely interested in, and that the world actually needs. He calls this your specific knowledge, and he says your specific knowledge feels like play to you and looks like work to everyone else. When I read that, I actually stopped what I was doing and sat with it for an hour. I had been trying to build skills that everyone else was building, following the same templates, copying the same playbooks. But the things I was naturally drawn to, the weird intersections of topics I love, those were being ignored. That insight sent me down a path of figuring out what my actual specific knowledge is. And it's still one of the most useful frameworks I've ever found. Idea 2. Happiness is a skill. Naval says something that sounds simple until you really think about it. Happiness is not something that happens to you. It's something you practice. He talks about how he spent years chasing success, thinking that the next achievement would make him happy. It never did, until he started treating happiness like a habit, choosing to be present, removing things that made him unhappy, rather than adding more things he thought would make him happy. He says, the most important trick to being happy is to realize that happiness is a skill you develop and a choice you make. I've thought about that sentence almost every week since I read it. This book is short, it reads fast, but I've gone back to it 4 times this year. Every time I find something I missed. If I had to choose one book from this entire list, just one, it might be this one. So there they are. The only 5 books that truly mattered from a year of reading 52. Let me say them one more time. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Because meaning is more powerful than motivation. Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Because you are not as rational as you think. Deep Work by Newport. Because focused attention is becoming the rarest and most valuable skill on the planet. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Manson. Because suffering is unavoidable, but you get to choose what you suffer for. The Almanac of Naval Ravikant by Eric Jorgensen. Because happiness is a skill, and your specific knowledge is your superpower. Now here's the thing I want to leave you with. I'm not saying don't read other books. Reading is still one of the best investments you can make in yourself. Even the 47 books that didn't make this list taught me something. But I am saying this, be selective with what you read deeply. Some books deserve a skim. Some deserve a chapter. And a few, a precious few, deserve your full attention, your margin notes, your reflection. The goal isn't to read more books. The goal is to be changed by the right ones. If one book on this list spoke to you, go read it this week. Not next month, this week. That's all I've got for today. If you found this useful, share it with one person who reads, or who's been meaning to start. And if you want me to do a deep dive on any one of these books, the full breakdown, the best chapters, the exact ideas, drop it in the comments and I'll make it happen. I'll see you in the next one.